It was my first day at a new college. I stood at the gate, clutching my bag like it might protect me, and my heart, it was beating like a war drum inside my chest. Everything felt bigger than me. The buildings, the crowds, the noise. But deep inside, buried beneath the nerves, I was hopeful. Hopeful that this new place might help me forget what had hurt me for so many years. As I stepped into the campus, my eyes searched for something familiar, even though nothing was. No one knew me here. No one knew my story. And that anonymity, it felt like a strange kind of freedom. Inside my bag was my diary, my secret world, the only place that truly knew me. I whispered under my breath, "Lena, just smile. Just survive today." I found a quiet bench near the library and sat down. Alone. All around me, students laughed and talked like they'd known each other for years. I was invisible like always, and honestly I was okay with that. Then she came. A girl with wild curls, bright eyes, and a laugh that carried across the courtyard. She dropped onto the bench beside me like we'd known each other forever. "Hey, I'm Maya. You look like you could use a friend." I smiled awkwardly. Not because I didn't want a friend, but because I didn't know how to trust one anymore. Still, something about her felt safe. And that day, for the first time in a long time, I laughed. It was soft, hesitant, but real. Maya became my first real friend at college. We studied together, shared snacks under the old tree by the library, and told each other silly stories late into the night. She started calling me Elle, and that tiny nickname felt like someone had finally seen me. One afternoon we sat beneath that tree. Our books were open, but neither of us was reading. Maya turned to me, her voice quieter than usual. "You don't say much, but I know there's something deep in you. Something heavy." I looked down at the corner of my bag. My diary tucked safely inside. That little book held everything I'd never said aloud. And for the first time I told someone a piece of my truth. I didn't tell her everything, just enough to feel lighter. I told her about the night I couldn't forget. The one that made me afraid of the dark. The one that made me afraid of people. She listened without interrupting, without judging. When I was done, she squeezed my hand and said, "I'm here for you, Lena. Always." I believed her. I shouldn't have. It was a cloudy Thursday morning when I saw him for the first time. Jason. He wasn't loud or flashy like the other guys. He was calm, soft-spoken. There was a kind of gravity about him that made people listen when he talked. I didn't know him. Not yet. But when our eyes met, my breath caught. Maya noticed. "Uh-oh," she teased. "Someone's got a crush." I laughed it off, but inside something was blooming. Over time, I found myself writing about him in my diary. Quiet feelings, hopes, daydreams. Nothing dramatic. Just the innocent whispers of a girl learning how to feel again. And I thought it was safe, because no one was supposed to read it. Not even Maya. But one afternoon in the library, I stepped away to grab a book, leaving my bag behind. Just for a minute. When I came back, Maya was scrolling through her phone. She looked up, smiled, and said, "So, Jason, huh?" I froze. I had never told her, but I wanted to believe I was overreacting. I wasn't. The whispers started slowly. In the hallways. Behind my back. Giggling. Glances. I was lingering just a second too long. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. Then I heard it. Page 17. It's insane. My blood ran cold. Only one person knew what was on page 17. And she was standing across the hall laughing with her new group of friends, including Jason. That I didn't know how it happened. How the pages of my heart ended up as screenshots on other people's phones. But the betrayal stung more than the laughter. She didn't just read my diary. She shared it. That night, I found the diary placed back in my bag, carefully, as if nothing had happened. But some pages were folded differently. Some ink had smudged, like someone had touched it with sweaty fingers. I knew. The girl I had called my best friend had turned my pain into punchlines. I confronted her the next day. My voice shook as I asked, "Why did you do it?" She looked me straight in the eye. "Come on, Elle. You made it too easy, leaving it there like some tragic novel." Her smirk made my stomach turn. "That wasn't your story to tell," I whispered. She shrugged. "Grow up," and walked away. Just like that. What hurt the most wasn't the gossip. It was Jason. The boy I had written about in soft, Quiet words now avoided my eyes in class. I caught him once, reading something on a screen and then looking at me like I was a stranger. He never smiled at me again. They hadn't just stolen my words. They'd stolen my chance. I stopped attending classes regularly. I kept to the back, head down. I became invisible again. But this time I hadn't chosen it. One afternoon after class, Professor Hale stopped me. "You used to try. Now you look like you're surviving something." I tried to say I was fine, but the tears came first. "She didn't ask for details. She didn't need to. People's cruelty isn't your fault," she said gently. "It's a reflection of them. Not you." That night I reached for my diary, but it was gone again. This time forever. I grieved the words like I'd lost a part of myself. Because I had. My stories, my dreams, my truths, they no longer felt like mine. Maya approached me once more days later, her voice soft. "I didn't mean for it to go so far." I stared at her. "You read my heart. And you gave it away." She rolled her eyes. "Lena, it's not that deep." But to me it was everything. A week later, Professor Hale asked if anyone wanted to speak for Mental Health Awareness Week. I raised my hand. I don't remember every word I said. Just that I finally said something. "You all know my name. Many of you think you know my story. You heard it through whispers and screenshots. But none of you had the right." I looked at them. Not with shame but with strength. "I'm not asking for pity. I'm asking for respect. Behind every quiet girl is a truth you don't know. Think before you mock the pain you haven't lived." No applause. Just silence. But this time it was mine. I left the college that month. Not because I was weak. Because I chose peace. I applied to a new campus. One where no one knew me. No one had my diary. No one had taken my voice. And I began again. Not healed. But healing. I bought a new notebook. A blank one. And on the first page I wrote, "Dear Lena, they broke you, but you're still here. And that means everything." The first thing I noticed about the new college was the silence. Not the awkward kind that stretches between strangers. No, this was different. This was peaceful. The kind that made room for thought. For breath. For healing. I arrived 2 weeks after the semester started. Just another transfer student. No one stared. No one whispered. No one knew me. And that was the gift I never thought I'd crave so much. My dorm room was small. Clean. Bare walls and an old desk. I unpacked slowly, placing books on the shelf, folding clothes into drawers. And finally, I laid my new notebook on the desk like a soft declaration. This time no one would touch it but me. The first few days I kept to myself. I attended classes, nodded politely, but said little. I watched. I listened. I let time move at its own pace. But pain doesn't disappear just because the setting changes. Sometimes I'd be sitting in the back of a lecture hall, and suddenly I'd hear a laugh like Maya's, or catch a glance that felt too familiar. And my stomach would twist. I'd tighten my grip on the pen, scribble notes, pretend I was fine. But healing is not pretending. I knew that now. There was a cafe on the edge of campus. Quiet. Dim lights. Wooden chairs that creaked when you leaned back. I started going there between classes, always sitting at the same corner table with a window that faced the courtyard. That's where I first saw him. Liam. He worked the counter, tall, sleeves rolled up, always with a smudge of coffee on his apron and a smile that didn't try too hard. He noticed me after the third visit. "You always order the same tea," he said, sliding the cup across the counter. I smiled barely. "I like what I can count on." He tilted his head. "Fair. But variety's not always bad." I didn't answer. Just took my tea and returned to my table. But the next day when I walked in, he remembered my name. And that startled me more than I wanted to admit. We talked more after that. Small things. Weather. Music. Books. He liked old novels. Wrote poetry on napkins during slow hours. Sometimes I'd find a folded one under my cup with messy handwriting and metaphors that made me feel seen without being exposed. He never asked why I always sat alone. And I never told him. But slowly I started writing again. Not about what had happened. Not yet. Just about the present. The small moments. The taste of cinnamon. The way the sky looked before rain. His voice when he laughed softly at his own jokes. The world was quiet again. And inside that quiet, I was learning how to breathe. Then one day it happened. A girl in class tapped my shoulder and asked, "Are you Lena? From Brookridge College?" My body froze. I nodded slowly. She smiled. "My cousin goes there." I think she knew someone who anyway just wanted to say, "You're brave." Brave. The word stunned me. Not dramatic. Not attention-seeking. Not pathetic. Brave. I whispered, "Thank you." And I meant it. That night I returned to my notebook. And I finally wrote the words I'd been avoiding. She hurt me. But I survived. He never saw me. But I'm learning to see myself. They laughed. But I kept breathing. Every page became a piece of myself returned. And this time no one could take it. Liam noticed the shift. He never asked, but one day he walked me home after my shift at the cafe. We stood outside my dorm under the soft glow of the streetlight. I thanked him for the tea. For the company. For not pushing. He looked at me, eyes kind. "Lena," he said quietly, "I don't know what happened before. But I like who you are now." And I cried. Not because I was broken. But because for the first time in a long, long time I believed him. Dear Maya, I hope one day you realize what you did. Not because I want revenge. But because I want you to grow. Because girls like us, when we betray each other, we break something sacred. I've forgiven you. Not for your sake. But for mine. You don't own my story anymore. I do. I've started reading my poetry at open mic nights now. My voice still trembles sometimes. But I speak. And when I finish I see heads nodding. Eyes shining. Hands clapping. Not because they know my past, but because they hear my heart. I still keep a diary. But it's no longer a hiding place. It's a home. It had been almost a year since I left Brookridge. A year since the betrayal. Since the tears. Since I ran, not just from them, but from the version of myself that begged for their kindness. I hadn't planned to return. But healing has strange rhythms. And sometimes, to truly move forward, you have to face the places that broke you. So on a quiet Saturday morning, I took a train back to the town where I'd almost lost myself. The streets looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I had just grown. I walked slowly past the old bookstore where Maya and I used to sit, pretending we liked the same authors. I passed the park bench where Ryan kissed me for the first time. I even passed the dorm building, still tall, still gray, where I had once poured my heart into a journal, only to have it thrown back at me like garbage. But I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I just kept walking. Because this time I wasn't here to beg. I was here to reclaim. I stopped outside the old campus cafe. I didn't go in. I just stood there, remembering the last time I sat at that back table, hoping no one would notice my swollen eyes. Back then I thought silence would protect me. That if I disappeared quietly, they'd forget me faster. But silence is its own kind of prison. I pulled out my current notebook, worn, soft-edged, full of my own voice. I opened it and scribbled one line. This place saw me broken. But I am not broken anymore. I had no plan. No speeches. But I found myself walking to the student office. When the receptionist asked if I needed help, I simply said, "I want to leave something for the English department bulletin board." She nodded, gestured toward the corkboard in the hallway. And there, among flyers and forgotten tutoring ads, I pinned a printed page. It was a poem. One of mine. Signed only with an initial. Not to shame them. Not to expose. But to remind whoever needed it. You can survive betrayal. You can reclaim your name. As I turned to leave, someone called my name. Lena. I froze. It was Maya. Of course it was. She looked thinner. Paler. Her hair was shorter, her smile cautious. "I heard you left," she said softly. "I did." She looked down. "I didn't think you'd ever come back." I shrugged. "Neither did I." There was a long silence. And then she said something I didn't expect. "I'm sorry." I studied her face. The guilt. The uncertainty. The way her hands trembled. And I believed her. But that didn't mean I needed her anymore. "I forgive you," I said. "But I'm not doing it for you." She nodded. "I know." We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just stood there, two people who once trusted each other, now learning how to let go. And that was enough. That night, back in my new dorm, my real home, I sat with Liam on the rooftop. He brought cookies. I brought my words. You okay? He asked. I nodded. I went back today. His eyes widened, but he didn't interrupt. I saw Maya. I forgave her. I left a poem on the wall. He smiled gently. You didn't burn the place down? I laughed, the sound surprising even me. No, just left something better. We sat in silence a while. Then he reached for my hand. You're the bravest person I know, he whispered. No, I said, squeezing back. I'm just finally being myself. They laughed, but I stayed silent. They mocked, but I held the pen. They kissed each other, and I kissed my sorrow goodnight. Now I write with fire, but not to burn, only to light the way. For girls like me,